Hi everyone, recently had the question on how to set the value of a date time control. So let's put a date time control from a list lookup. So let's go and put our list lookup on. So we've got a list lookup and drop it there. So we're gonna use our project sites we've got before. So I got our site and our ID and a bunch of other things, and also the start date of the project. Now they're all the same date, doesn't really matter. So we've got our lookup, and we're going to call this project sites. And we're going to say we're going to look up the project sites and just all items, and I'm going to select the site. So that just shows me the site name here. So that's pretty much all we need. Now what I always like to do when I'm building something is put a label on, just so I can see what's coming back in the data. So the first thing we want to do is put a form control in. I'm going to put on my project sites. So if I go to preview and I select FarmCo, we can see that the date time doesn't do anything yet, but also that we can see the ID of FarmCo is 2 and that delimiter is there, and then 3 FarmCo circles. So the data's coming back all good. So we'll just keep that there for a reference. Now, the second thing that sometimes for beginners to this sort of functionality, what you might want to do is then create 2 variables. Now I'll explain these. So if you're doing a lookup, there's 2 components which we saw before. So coming back to preview, I'll explain this. So in a lookup, what is returned is 2 properties, the ID from the SharePoint list and also the value, and the bit in the middle just separates it. So how do we get those 2 parts? So what we can do is come to variables, insert, create a variable, and we use the parse lookup true. Copy that because we'll need it. So we go parse lookup. And what this is doing is actually saying just separate out the value of that lookup control. So I say, so project sites, and first one is true. And we'll create an insert, and we'll actually might put a gap there. And we'll go, the next one is false. And parse lookup, false. And so you'll see what parse lookup true and false means. Parse lookup, the function, not the variable, and we say project sites is false. Now we'll go ahead and create and insert that one there. So then what I might say is value of lookup, just so I have context to what I'm actually looking at. And we'll say, where else have I gone? Parse lookup false, so we can see what that is. And go to the start of this, and we're going to say parse lookup true. Okay, now we've got that ready to go. Let's go to preview and see what happens. So when I select FarmCo circle, we can see the value of the lookup is 2 ID and 3 the value. So when we do parse lookup true, it's saying just return me the value. Parse lookup false is the ID. Now why do I need this? Well, if we want to get that date here, we need to do a lookup function to go and get this value. So the next thing we need to do is a lookup function. So we'll go back to designer and we'll create another variable. So we'll say lookup result. And we'll come in here, we'll go insert, and we're going to say date from lookup. Lookup. So I'm going to return this as text first, and then we'll go into how we get the date and convert it and so on and so forth. So first I say lookup, the lookup function, and if you look through here, it's actually got the help. So if you're not following exactly, you've always got the help in here. But the first thing it's looking for is quotation marks is the list name, so project sites, and the list name is obviously the list name here. The second thing it's asking for is the column to look on. So it's saying I want to do a lookup of all this data, and first to give me the list name. The next thing it's saying, well, how do I know which one to return? And that's saying which column should I look on? And I'm going to say the ID column. So I'm saying the ID column. Then it's going to say what value, which one do I pick? So which one do I pick? And for that we actually use our variable, or you could do the parse lookup. So we could say let's build the function. We'll go parse lookup is false. We could use the existing variable if we wanted to, or we could put the function in here, parse lookup, and we say project sites, and we say false, because we want to get the ID, and then we'd say what column do we actually want? We want start date. So then finally we say start date. Okay, so that's pretty long-winded, but if you break it down, you can see here. First thing is with the lookup, we're asking for. Hang on, let's just separate this out a bit more. We're looking for the list name. We're looking for what column do we filter on? Where this is the filter. This is the value we're going to filter with, and the Parse Lookup, obviously. And then finally, what column do we actually want to get back? So when you look at it like that, it's a bit easier to understand. So let's go and create insert, and let's go to preview. So we come back, FarmCo circle, and we can see it's ParseLookup true, ParseLookup false. That's the full value, and now we're getting the date. Now this is UTC format, I think it's called, and so it doesn't really look like a date that you'd usually want to read, but you can see it's 2020. The month is the July the 7th, and the day is the 15th, and then it comes through to the time as well. So there you go there. So that's American format, and this is UTC format. So then if I was to come through here and let's say, what have I done here? Let's get rid of that. Exit quick edit, that's why I was a bit confused. Okay, so we're going to open this one up, and we're going to actually say, we're going to put the date to, it's all squashed in SharePoint, the 31st, because we know there's not a 31st month, so let's keep it like that, and click there, saving, saved. Okay, so FarmCo circle now is the 31st. So if I come back to here, and go to designer, go back to preview, so we're refreshing, FarmCo circle, and it's got the 31st. Looks good so far. Now we want to get this value back into this date time control. Now what you then do is you'd say, well, I need to do a rule, because you wouldn't use a default value, because default values, so if I come back to here, default value is only when the form loads, not once you've been using the form for a while. It's only the first time when the form loads. So what you need to do is create a rule, and you say something like fill the date. You need to say if project sites is filled, then the date time value is, and click the insert, and you would say the variable. Now coming through here, you'll notice I can't select the date variable, the date that we got from the lookup. Now the reason for this is it is actually text, whereas the date time control is actually wanting a date time variable. So we can actually come to here and we can copy all this out, copy it, cancel. You could delete it if you wanted to. You might clean things up a bit later on. Same function, same sort of thing, but we make it a date time and say date time lookup in correct format or type. Okay, so now we can go and create insert. Oh, can't create insert. That was me being silly. I've forgotten to do the main thing, because all we've done is just copied that same function. What we need to do is a convert to date. So we wrap that into convert to date, and now we're good to go. Create and insert. So now we've actually gone back, and this, because we sort of stepped through a few things there, because we went and looked at this one, edited it, copied it, created a new variable, put our convert to date around it, updated it, and it inserted. Once we come back to here, insert it back into my rule. Now we can also say the inverse of this. If the date, if the project site's not filled, then just clear out the value. Right, so this is quite complex, I must admit, but once you see it in action, hopefully it makes a bit more sense. Finally, we go project sites. Let's select Village Lane, July the 15th. So July the 15th. If I come to FarmCo, July the 31st. So we can actually see that the syntax is working correctly. There is no 31st month, and so it's all processing because of UTC format. So the only trick here, well, there's a couple of tricks actually, and we could clean this up a bit. So once I'm sort of done testing all this, I would probably delete this box and clean up some of the variables I don't need, but I won't do that for the moment. So yeah, what we did was, as we can see here, it's working. So going back through the variables, we looked at what Parse Lookup true and false is, so we don't really need those anymore, so I can delete those. And we looked at date time from that lookup function, but as text, so we don't need that anymore. We can delete that. And once we had that lookup all done, so we look at this again, we first thing we did was we did a lookup to project sites, filtered on the column of ID, passed a value from the lookup, the drop down. Then we said give me the start date, and that's all wrapped up in a convert to date. With that variable, we went to rules, and we said if the project sites or the project sites lookup is filled, then we set that value in there. So then we can come back to here and we can see all our variables are broken because we just deleted them. So we need to clean a few things up. So you might not actually want this on your final form, obviously. Let's not go too far. And let's go here, clean that up, and all right. So now everything's all clean. It works nice and well, and FarmCo circle is setting the date. So, I mean, the final thing is you probably don't want people actually changing this. So you might come in here and say, look, set that to read only is true, and look, why don't we just clean that up as well? So now we come to preview, select a village lane, and the date set there. FarmCo circle, 31st of July. So that is how we set the date of a datetime control from another list using the list lookup control. Hope you found that helpful. Let me know in the comments. Cheers.